What's more insulting than hiding the truth about one of the most disturbing scandals of our time? Is it the outright lies we've been fed about transparency? Is it the endless delays, the edits, the redactions, the convenient loss of crucial files? Or is it the smug way powerful people dismiss anyone who dares to question the official story, mocking them as conspiratorial or delusional? Think about that for a second. A scandal that should have rocked the world, a case that should have shattered elite circles of power, instead reduced to a sideshow where the truth is buried under distraction and ridicule. And yet, somehow, the one man who constantly inserts himself into this story, Donald Trump, insists he wants to reveal it all. But every time the moment comes, the promises crumble, the narrative shifts, and the cover-up deepens. We're told to move on, to stop asking questions. We're told there are bigger issues: Texas, immigration, inflation, whatever today's headlines may be. But beneath that noise lies something darker: the Epstein files, the list of names, the evidence of powerful men and women entangled in a web of exploitation, secrecy, and lies. And despite all the chatter, despite the viral hashtags and outrage, the very same people who promised to open the vault have slammed it shut. That includes Donald Trump. He's played both sides, promising justice when it suits him, then dismissing it all as old news when the heat gets too close. To understand why this matters, we have to look at who Jeffrey Epstein was and why his story refuses to go away. Epstein wasn't just some wealthy financier. He was a man who embedded himself into the highest circles of money and power, from tutoring the children of billionaires to managing investments for some of the wealthiest names in America. Epstein built a network that gave him access to people who shape governments, corporations, and media narratives. With that access came the disturbing reality: he used his wealth and influence not to better the world, but to exploit the vulnerable. His Palm Beach mansion, his Manhattan townhouse, his infamous island, all of them became synonymous with abuse, secrecy, and complicity. Donald Trump wasn't just another distant acquaintance. For years, the two men were seen together at parties, clubs, and private gatherings. Photographs captured them side by side, smiling, laughing, enjoying the same social circles. Trump himself once wrote warmly of Epstein, comparing his date one name recognition to Elvis and noting how his staff didn't even bother asking for a last name when Jeffrey was around. Trump even admitted that when he visited Epstein's Palm Beach home, the pool was full of beautiful young girls. He brushed it off with a chilling remark, thinking Epstein had just been generous in letting neighborhood kids use his pool. But we know now that those weren't innocent pool parties. They were the setting for acts of abuse described in painful detail by dozens of victims who were lured in under false promises of money and opportunity. The horror of what Epstein did should have ended his life of luxury long before it did. Starting in 2005, young girls bravely came forward to describe what had happened to them inside his mansion. They were told they could make a few $100s by giving a new simple massage, only to find themselves trapped in situations that left them scarred. Investigators identified more than 30 victims, yet Epstein served barely over a year in jail, a slap on the wrist for crimes that would have buried anyone else for decades. That sweetheart deal didn't happen by accident. It was the result of powerful connections pulling strings behind the curtain, shielding him from real justice. And this is where the scandal deepens. Because the media, the so-called watchdogs of democracy, were largely silent, outlets had the evidence, journalists had the testimonies, and yet the stories were killed. Vanity Fair ignored the words of Epstein's early accusers. AB News buried a damning interview. The reason? Protecting the powerful, protecting reputations, protecting access to royalty, politicians, and billionaires. It wasn't until Epstein's second arrest in 2019 that the story truly broke open. And even then, he never lived to stand trial. Dying under circumstances so suspicious that Epstein didn't kill himself became more than a meme. It became a statement of disbelief, a shorthand for the idea that the public was once again being lied to. Donald Trump saw all of this unfold while positioning himself as the man who could expose the truth. He deflected blame toward Bill Clinton, pointing to Epstein's island as a place where others, not him, should be scrutinized. He insisted he hadn't spoken to Epstein in years, that he was never a fan, that he'd had a falling out long before the scandal erupted. Yet Epstein's address book contained 14 separate contact numbers for Trump. His name appeared among the many who had flow. On Epstein's yet, the public record contradicted the narrative Trump was building for himself. And instead of answers, we got misdirection. When Trump ran for president again, he dangled the promise of transparency like bait. He claimed he would declassify the files. He told his followers he would reveal the names. He acted as though he was the one who wanted to shine a light on this dark chapter. Supporters cheered, convinced that finally someone in power would deliver what the public deserved. But when he regained the White House, those promises evaporated. Instead of releasing the list, his allies paraded binders labeled Epstein files as though they were props for a political theater. Instead of truth, the public got staged events, photo ops, and empty announcements. Critics called it what it was, a charade designed to buy time and distract from the fact that nothing was actually being revealed. And then, when Elon Musk accused Trump directly of being implicated in the very files he claimed he wanted to release, the mask slipped. Musk tweeted that Trump's name was in the documents, that this was the real reason they remained hidden. The tweet was later deleted, but it left a stain that couldn't be washed away. Trump dismissed it all as old news, insisting he had cut ties with Epstein long before, claiming he had nothing to hide. But the louder he tried to brush it aside, the more people questioned why he hadn't simply done what he promised and released the truth. Meanwhile, newly uncovered evidence kept surfacing. Journalists exposed letters allegedly written by Trump to Epstein, including a disturbing birthday note that ended with the words, "May every day be another wonderful secret." Trump immediately sued for defamation, denying the letter's authenticity, but the damage was done. Each new revelation, each denial, each attempt to silence the press only deepened public suspicion. What we see now is a pattern. At first, Trump used the Epstein case to score political points against his enemies. Then, when faced with scrutiny himself, he minimized the story, ridiculed those still asking questions, and buried the files behind excuses about protecting victims' identities, the very thing he accused others of doing, covering up, delaying, misleading. He ended up doing himself, and in the process, he underestimated the public. Because every time he told people to move on, every time he called it boring or old news, more people started asking, what is he afraid of? What's still being hidden? The Epstein case has always been about more than one man. It's about a system of power and privilege that allows the wealthy and connected to operate above the law. It's about how victims are silenced, how evidence disappears, how media outlets kill stories to protect their access to elites. And now, it's about how Donald Trump, once promising to be the man who would reveal it all, became just another figure in the long line of those keeping the lid on the truth. The tragedy is that the victims remain forgotten in all of this political theater. Behind every file, every redacted page, every missing tape, there are real lives, real people who suffered and were silenced. The cover-up isn't just about protecting reputations. It's about erasing those stories, pretending the crimes weren't as widespread, pretending the connections weren't as deep. And if Trump succeeds in making the public believe it doesn't matter anymore, then the victims are silenced once again. But maybe that's the miscalculation, because the more politicians play games with this scandal, the more the public refuses to forget. The Streisand effect ensures that every attempt to bury the story only amplifies it further. And no matter how much Trump or anyone else insists we move on, the truth has a way of clawing back to the surface. The Epstein files represent a fork in the road, and either they remain a locked vault, protected by those who benefit from secrecy, or they become the scandal that finally forces accountability in the highest echelons of power. Trump wanted people to believe he was the one who would open that vault. Instead, he slammed it shut tighter than ever. And now he finds himself caught in the very web he once pretended to expose. So the question becomes, how long can the lies hold? How long can the diversions work? Because no matter how much the powerful think the public will forget, history shows the truth always leaks out, sometimes slowly, sometimes explosively, but always inevitably. And when it does, it won't just be Epstein-esque crimes on trial. It will be the entire system that enabled him, the media that protected him, the politicians who used him, and the leaders who promised justice only to betray it. And at the center of that reckoning will be the man who swore he had nothing to hide, even as the shadows closed in around him.